doubt and fear follow each other everywhere you go. If doubt doesn't get you, fear will. If fear doesn't get you, doubt will. And then what those two things do is then they steal your confidence and they rob you of your confidence. And one of the things I teach people, David, is I tell them that when you see somebody that's operating from a lack of confidence, they are most likely operating from an abundance of doubt. And so our confidence is directly linked to that. And I've just seen people like myself spiral out of control because the doubts start up and then the fear comes in and then the confidence goes out. And then you're just left there with nothing but, what am I going to do with my life? And that's where I found myself 17 years ago, was in that exact place. And so I think they all kind of intertwine together. But doubt to me was that driving force, because we all have fears. And, you know, there's fears of everything. We were born with two fears, fear of falling and fear of loud noises. And every other fear that we have, we've created in our own mind, in our own environment, as we've grown up and, you know, gone through this thing called life. But doubt is just something that attaches to people all the time. They're always, you know, you're starting a podcast. You're doubting, oh man, I wonder if this is going to be good. I wonder if people are going to listen. I wonder if they're going to download the podcast messages. You're starting a new business. Oh, I wonder if I'm going to be as good as somebody else, or this is going to happen. I mean, every scenario in life, we can see the hand of doubt in there. And I tell people the key to it is that you've got to learn how to manage the doubts and not have the doubts manage you.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have the coach with us. The coach is here, and I don't see a whistle around his neck, so I think we're going to be fine. Coach Jerry is here today. We're on the podcast. We're going to be talking about his journey as an author. He's got a great website. He's got all the information for you. Speaker, podcast guest, future podcaster, and so much more. Coach Jerry, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you here.
David, my friend, thank you so much for the privilege of being on your podcast. I'm really, really excited to be here.
We're going to scratch everyone's itch today and talk about something amazing from your journey as an author and a speaker. There's so much to talk about.
Sure.
First, let's start off with where you are in this big world of ours.
I actually live in La Quinta, California, which is out in the Palm Springs area. It's about 15 to 20 minutes east of Palm Springs. So we're having beautiful, life-altering weather right now. Talk to me in July. I'll have a much different story for you in July.
It sounds like a terrible place to live. I have snow. It's cold. I can't feel my feet. It's freezing up here in Canada. So I'm completely jealous of where you live, and I would love to see it someday.
You know what? I love Canada. I love snow, but I can't live in it. I can visit it, but I can't. I don't like the hot either, but if I had to choose, I'll take the warm over the cold any day.
Canada is kind of like that relative you want to see once a year. That's kind of what it is. That's how it feels. But yeah, no, it's good. I love it. Okay, we met through an online group on Facebook looking for guests for my podcast, I believe. And I'm excited that you're here to talk about your journey, your author journey. Let's jump in there at the beginning. How did all this start for you to become an author? I'm really curious how somebody goes from a non-author to becoming an author. As a non-author myself, I don't understand, or I can't imagine this process. How did it happen for you?
Well, you know, Dave, I think for everybody it's different. And I think for me, it came from the fact that I believe that an author has obviously something to share, an experience that they've gone through, things that they've learned that they believe can be a true benefit to other people. And I believe that's the reason I wanted to write a book. But the topic for my book came 30 years ago without me even really knowing it was going to be a book. And to make a very long story short, I was going through, this was probably back in, it was in 2006. I was going through one of the most difficult, challenging times of my life. I was going through a divorce with my son's mom after 10 years of marriage. I was in a massive, massive state of depression. And the business that we had built together for 13 years just started to implode in front of my eyes. And I found myself in November of that year laying on the floor of my apartment, writing a letter to my son, who was at the time 3 years old, trying to explain when he got older why his dad took his own life. And it was a very, very dark time of my life. But I personally am a man of faith, and I do believe that God saved me because there was a greater purpose he had beyond what I could see. And as you know, that experience ended, and luckily, obviously, I didn't go through with it, but I started asking myself some questions. How in the world did the guy like me, the motivator, the encourager, the one that everyone came to for advice, for help, how did that guy end up on the floor of his apartment getting ready to end it all? And what I began to realize, and I began to learn about myself and about just people in general, is that when everything was clicking, everything was going great, things were smooth, I was mastering my mindset. But on the floor of that apartment, I realized that my mindset had mastered me. And specifically, it was the area of doubt. It was the doubting of my abilities, my skills, doubting what I was going to do, doubting if I had any hope anymore. It was the doubts of other people in my life that were telling me you're never going to do anything, just give it up already. And doubt literally almost took me out. And that's why about 2 months ago, I finally published my first book, aptly titled, Don't Let Doubt Take You Out. And so my journey from the floor to where I am today has been a journey of ups and downs, of learnings, experiences, good, bad, all the things in between. And so I realized that as I started to coach entrepreneurs around the world, I've traveled all over the world, I've spoke all over the world. And as I trained entrepreneurs, what I started to learn is no matter what level they were at, no matter how big their bank account was, how many letters were in front of their name, behind their name, where they lived, what they drove, any of that, I found out that they all dealt with doubt at some level, at some capacity, at some time. And I realized, there is an opportunity here for me to be able to package up the journey that I took, the lessons that I've learned, and put it in a book format and get it in people's hands that maybe will say, wow, this really made a difference for me. This really helped me. And that is the reason why I wrote the book.
What other things come along with doubt in our lives that kind of attach themselves to doubt that also have an impact on us? What other things are kind of linked to doubt?
Well, I think first of all, doubt and fear, I kind of call them the twin towers, because the twin towers in our mind, because doubt and fear follow each other everywhere you go. If doubt doesn't get you, fear will. If fear doesn't get you, doubt will. And then what those two things do is then they steal your confidence and they rob you of your confidence. And one of the things I teach people, David, is I tell them that when you see somebody that's operating from a lack of confidence, they are most likely operating from an abundance of doubt. And so our confidence is directly linked to that. And I've just seen people like myself spiral out of control because the doubts start up and then the fear comes in and then the confidence goes out. And then you're just left there with nothing but, what am I going to do with my life? And that's where I found myself 17 years ago, was in that exact place. And so I think they all kind of intertwine together. But doubt to me was that driving force, because we all have fears. And, there's fears of everything. We were born with two fears, fear of falling and fear of loud noises. And every other fear that we have, we've created in our own mind, in our own environment, as we've grown up and, gone through this thing called life. But doubt is just something that attaches to people all the time. They're always, you're starting a podcast. You're doubting, oh man, I wonder if this is going to be good. I wonder if people are going to listen. I wonder if they're going to download the podcast messages. You're starting a new business. Oh, I wonder if I'm going to be as good as somebody else, or this is going to happen. I mean, every scenario in life, we can see the hand of doubt in there. And I tell people the key to it is that you've got to learn how to manage the doubts and not have the doubts manage you. And what the book is all about are 10 different ways that I learned on this journey to manage those doubts so that they don't take me out when they come against me.
Okay, is there any way that you can share one of those tips?
Share as many as you want.
I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it.
Yes, absolutely. I would say the biggest one for me, and the biggest one in the book, is you've got to get out of the comparison game. There is nothing that will open the door of doubt in your mind greater than you comparing yourself, your business, your journey with somebody else around you. Comparison is the kiss of death in life and in business. And I remember my father, when I was a young kid, I was about 8 years old, and we would watch horse races all the time. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, what are those things on the side of the horse's eyes? And he says, oh, those are blinders. And I said, well, what are those for? He said, well, the jockey doesn't want the horse to look to the left or the right. He wants the horse to focus on the path they're on. And I think life should be like that. We should have blinders when we come out of the womb so that we don't focus on everything around us. We focus on what's in front of us. And one of the things I teach people, David, is I tell them that, when it comes to this whole thing is oh man, my brain is working so fast. See, for those of your listeners here, I'm an A-type personality, so my brain works faster than my mouth can process the information. Mm-hmm. So forgive me for that. So I have to slow my thinking down a little bit. But when you compare yourself to other people, you become bitter. But when you compare yourself to yourself, you become better. And the only comparison game we should be playing is a comparison game that asks the question, did I get a little better today than I was yesterday? And if we constantly compare ourselves to ourselves and our own personal growth and development, then one day other people will be comparing themselves to us. And that to me was a big one for me, was always comparing everything that was going on in my life to what everyone else was doing and letting that doubt creep in. See, you're not as good. You're not as talented. You're not as smart. You're not as this.
Right.
Any of your listeners right now, I guarantee you, are nodding their head because they completely understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's almost like your golf game. You just want to be better than the last game you had, right? Better than the last tee that you shot from. It's all about your own personal growth in golf compared to a team sport where you're comparing yourself to the competitor and your teammates. You get lost in the mix.
Absolutely. 100%. And it's in golf, that's a great example because, man, it is easy to compare yourself with people when you're golfing. But if you just go out there and compare yourself to yourself, did I get a little better than the last game I played? You're going to be up there sooner or later if you just keep those doubts away.
And that common thing we hear all the time is that imposter syndrome people wrestle with, writing a book, creating anything in the world. There's always going to be 1,000 people better than we are. So that imposter syndrome, I think, really would have roots in those fears and doubts, right?
Yes.
And it does robs the potential that maybe there's somebody with a great message for the world, but they look at everyone's highlight reels and go, I can't live up to those highlight reels. I'm just starting, right?
Yes. And it's so funny because one of the chapters in my book is actually on imposter syndrome because I had that problem when I started my first business. I was in financial services, and that's where I got my career got started 30 years ago. But the funny side to that is I was living in a 300 square foot guest house. I was $26,000 in credit card debt. I was borrowing money from friends of mine to put gas in my car to get to appointments. And then when I got to the appointment, then I would sit there and talk to people about how to properly manage their own finances. So you talk about imposter syndrome. I lived it. And so I write about that in the book because that imposter syndrome just built up such doubt in my mind about my ability to do anything. It was almost crippling to me until I learned how to get beyond that imposter syndrome and realize that, hey, this is how everyone starts. You got to start somewhere. You need to learn. You have to develop. And that kind of helped it out a little bit. But that's one of the chapters in the book is on imposter syndrome.
Okay, so what feeds doubt? What are the, like, I'm hungry right now. I'm ready for dinner. I'm thinking about food. What feeds our doubts? What makes it fatter?
I think what makes doubt fatter is when we give doubt such control over our own lives, where we actually buy into and believe the doubts that we're actually having in our own mind. For instance, when I was on that floor, my doubts were that, you can't win. And I looked at my circumstances and said, oh, yep, you're right. You're never going to be able to do anything because you failed at this and you'll fail at something else. Oh, yep, you're right. And so when we focus on the things that doubt is feeding into your mind, just like anything else, whatever you feed grows. And so the more you focus on those doubts, the more you don't manage them, the more you don't push them away, the more you take inventory of them in your own mind, the greater those doubts become until they just surround you constantly and make you believe what isn't really true, but it's what you believe is the truth. And I'll tell you, doubt became so real to me. I created a character, and it's in the book, but I call him Dan Doubt. And I always say Dan Doubt was this little tiny guy. He was in wingtip shoes, 3-piece suit, slick back hair, and everywhere I would go, there he was. When I was in my car, he was strapped into the passenger seat. When I came home, he was sitting in my recliner chair. He was everywhere that I went. And so I would talk to him like doubt was an actual person. And I would literally condemn doubt and say, doubt, you have no place in my life. I am not going to buy into this. I'm not going to live like this. You need to just get out because I'm not giving you any energy. I would talk to doubt like if it was a real thing, a real person. And it sounds dumb, but what happens is when I would do that, I would feel me taking back some of that power that doubt was trying to strip me of. And it really was a huge game changer for me on my journey.
I like that. The wingtip shoes. I have this picture of Dan in my head now, and I feel like I know him. I feel like I would like to give him a little shot too as well. Like, leave me alone.
We all know Dan.
Yeah, we have. I can picture him. I can picture him, and he's completely inappropriate at the best of times.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay, we talked about feeding your doubts. It's the beginning of the year. People are on a diet kick right now. Everybody wants to get healthy. The opposite of feeding our doubts. How do we, in addition to what we just talked about, how else can we starve our doubts? What can we do to do that?
That's a great question. I always tell people you've got to starve your doubts and build your belief.
Okay.
Because here's the thing. Doubt and belief cannot exist in your mind at the same time. And I tell the story this way, David, because I love stories and I love visual images. Just like you will now, anytime you think of doubt, you have that image in your mind, right? We think in pictures. That's how we think.
Yeah. So
when I was a kid, and maybe you relate to this too, I loved playing musical chairs when we were kids. Today, our kids I said to my son, musical chairs. He thought it was just a chair you sat in and listened to music. I said, no. But I remember, to me, it was like the original UFC. Because when you got down to the one chair and the two people and that music stopped, it was an all-out wrestling match to be the one to sit in that chair. And so I envisioned that as what happens in our mind. And what I envisioned was there's a table in your mind and there's two chairs. And one chair is for you and one chair is for your guest of honor that you're having over for dinner. So you get a knock on the door of your mind and you go and open the door and there's your other friend. I called him Bob Belief. And Bob Belief came with great intentions. He wants to sit at your table and encourage you and tell you all the reasons you're going to do it. You're going to make it. Don't give up. Keep going. Just lift you up. Well, while you're having this great conversation with Bob Belief, you get a knock on the door of your mind. And Bob says to you, you invite anybody else? Does it noted you? No. And so we go to the door and open it up. And who's standing there? Good old Dan Dowd, right? Three-piece suit, wingtip shoes. And he comes in. But the challenge is there's two of them and there's only one chair. So the question I ask people when I do live events and do my coaching is I ask people this: who's sitting at your table most of the time? Because they both can't be there at the same time. So the way you starve your doubts is you've got to build up your beliefs. You got to build up the belief that doubt's trying to strip away from you. And that's not easy. You have to practice. It's like people just want the magic wand. Just poof, I'm changed. No, you got to work at it. It's something that took me a long time from that floor back up on my feet, back to being somewhat productive. It took me some time to really learn how to be focused, that when I felt the doubts, I had to start thinking about the opposite of what is the thing I want to believe. This is doubt wanting me to believe this, but I don't want to believe that. I want to believe something else. And I had to actively focus my mind on what are the things I want to believe that doubt's trying to steal from me. And little by little, belief took the chair in my mind more than doubt did. Now, do I still have doubts? Every single day. And people ask me, well, how do you get rid of doubt? And the answer is you don't. You learn how to manage your doubts so your doubts won't manage you. And that's what the whole book was written for, is what are the steps? What are the things that you can do that can help you better manage those doubts in your business, in your life, at church, with your family, with your kids, with wherever it affects you. The better you manage it, the less it manages you.
So going back to writing that note to your 3-year-old son, who was sitting on the floor with you during that? Like your doubts, your beliefs, like where were they in that
There was no belief. There was no belief. It was all my doubts.
Yeah.
Every doubt that I had, there was no belief. My belief was there was nothing left for me. My belief was everything was stolen from me. I lost my marriage. I lost time with my son. I'm in this massive depression. The business I poured everything into, I lost that. I lost everything that mattered to me. So to me, in that moment on that floor, there was no belief. It was nowhere to be found. It was just complete, utter doubting that I could ever achieve anything great again in my life, because that's all I knew. That's all I did. I didn't know anything else. And it was just one of those moments as I was writing that letter, having this rage that came over me. And I remember banging on the floor, banging the walls, throwing things, breaking things, because I just couldn't figure out in that moment, how could I be on this floor doing this right now? And that's when I realized, man, I've allowed these things to manage my mind because I didn't take action at trying to overcome them when they came after me. And, today, as I go around, and speak and I train and I do executive coaching with people, it is amazing to me how many entrepreneurs of every level deal with doubt. I was just at a meeting today a business meeting. First time there were 60 people in the room. And I asked the question, how many of you in this room, these are all business people, how many of you in this room have ever dealt with doubt in your life? 60 hands went up. I said, how many of you have dealt with doubt at some level in some area of your life in the last month? Every hand went up. And I said, how many of you dealt with doubt on the way to the meeting, wondering if you should even be here? And of course, everybody laughed, but lots of people raised their hands. Yeah. It affects all of us. And we have to learn how to manage it so it doesn't take us out of the game.
Wow.
That's deep.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much here. Okay. So there's somebody listening to this, Jerry. The beauty of podcasting is that you can listen to something and nobody knows what you're listening to.
Right.
You got your earbuds in.
Right.
The whole world has no idea. You could be listening to music, an audiobook, whatever. Nobody knows. It's very personal. It's just you, me, and there's somebody listening right now. Right. That person has found this episode because of the title of your book, right, because of your website, your story. They've heard you speak, but they're struggling right now. And nobody knows about their struggle. It's just them. That's the only person who knows. Now, if I just kind of excuse myself from the conversation for a moment, I would love to throw the podcast into your lap, and I want you to talk to them directly.
Sure.
In their earbuds, one-on-one, and give them some kind of direction, hope, something that you would have loved to hear back when you were laying on the floor yourself, to put that into your hands. Because I just, there's something special about you and your mission in all of this. Yeah. You're not just here to sell a book, you're here to share a message. So that person listening to us right now, they're all ears, they're listening to you, and they would love to get your thoughts and some direction for their life. What would you like to say to them?
David, I truly appreciate that. That is an honor for you to trust me enough with your listeners, and it's a responsibility that I take seriously. And one thing you said that was absolutely true, I don't come on these podcasts just to sell books. I mean, I hope that after we're done, people will head over to Amazon and say, hey, I'd love to get a copy of the book. But I get on these podcasts that book or no book, I can impart something into somebody's life that's listening that can change them. And so if I'm talking to you today, you're listening in your AirPods or your headphones, and you're going through some difficult times. Maybe you're not on the floor getting ready to end it all, but you're going through financial struggles. You're going through marital challenges. Your kids, you don't know what's going on with them. You know, you're waiting for a raise at a job that you haven't got. You're looking for a job that you still need. Your business isn't going the way it wants to. All of these things create doubt in our mind. And when I was laying on the floor of that apartment, if there was one thing that I wish I would have known then that I know now, it would be this: do not struggle alone. Do not try to beat whatever battle you're facing by yourself, because the enemy wants to put you in a place where you're isolated. And when you're isolated, he's got free range of your head and your mind and can attack everything, which is what happened to me. I wish back then that I would have spoke to a couple of trusted people in my life. I'm not saying you got to go to a counselor. I'm not saying you got to go to a therapist. Nothing wrong with them. I've been to them. I'm not saying you need to do that. What I am saying is, don't struggle through things by yourself. Find some trusted people in your life that love you, that value you, that care about you, that aren't going to judge you, that aren't going to condemn you, but are going to listen to you with an open heart. They're going to let you share whatever you're going through, give you the best piece of advice, because sometimes just getting out what's festering in will change your whole dynamic of how you deal with doubt and everything else. I wish I would have been smart enough back then to be able to reach out to several of my friends who knew something was wrong with me. They kept asking me, Jerry, you're just not the same. What is going on? Oh, nothing. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm this. I'm that. Don't do that. We sometimes feel, well, I don't want other people to know my problems. They've got their own problems to deal with. Well, here's the thing. That's doubt speaking out in your mind. Oh, come on now. Don't go share your problems with them. Really? They've got their own issues, their own family stuff. They don't have time to listen to you. And then what happens? You doubt whether I should really talk to them now. And then you go, that's right. Maybe I shouldn't. And now you're isolated all by yourself again. Don't struggle alone. That is the biggest thing I wish somebody would have been better at helping me with back then. Because if they were, David, I don't think I would have been on that floor writing that letter to my son. And that letter said, my dearest son, I love you more than anything in the world, and you are the most important thing in my life. I know when you get older, you're going to have lots of questions. So I'm writing you this letter to try and explain to you why your dad took his own life. That was the letter that I was writing. And after I wrote that last sentence, I went into a rage of anger, throwing things, breaking things, just frustrated. And then like I said, being a man of faith, I just believe God saved me in that moment because there was a greater purpose for me. So if you're listening to me today, I'd love for you to get my book. I know my book will help you if you deal with doubt at any capacity. There's something in there that will make a difference. But even if you don't, all I'm going to tell you is don't struggle alone, because doubt grows in an environment of isolation. So don't struggle by yourself. That's what I would tell your listeners.
Wow. Wow. Like, as you speak, Jerry, you said you talk in pictures and I'm there with you. Like in the whole, as you walked us through that, I can tell that this is something that's your passion. And, we are the accumulation of our stories and what we've lived in our lives. And it's what we do with that, right? You didn't have to write this book. You didn't have to go out and speak. You don't have to do any of these things, but there's a reason why you're doing this. And what is that main reason? Why is this so important to you? Why is this your passion?
Wow. I don't like to see people hurt. I'm an empath. I feel people's pain. I feel their emotions. When I see people cry on television, I cry because I feel their pain. I can imagine what that feels like. And if my journey could save one person from going down a path that I was going down, if my story can help one person rebuild their confidence in themselves, to be able to overcome the things that have been holding them back because doubt's been just at them nonstop. If I could help that person not go through what I went through and be able to experience what I get to experience now because of what I've done, that's why I do what I do. And I tell people this all the time, David. When I do live events, I do executive coaching with people. We work on doubts. We work on fears. We work on limiting beliefs. Overcoming limiting beliefs. I can work with somebody for 6 months just on that alone. And we go through all sorts of different exercises and things that I've learned that have made a difference in people's lives. But I tell people, I'm not in this for the money. Obviously, this is how I make money. And what I charge people to do what I do is probably way less than I probably should be charging people. But my heart and my passion is making a difference, making an impact, knowing that this person's life that I'm dealing with is better because of what I shared with them. The greatest payment that I get, David, honestly, are the letters, the emails, the texts, how you've changed my life, how I needed to hear this, how I was almost at that place, how, I took pills trying to take my own life and I didn't think I had any hope. And looking at you now, I believe I do. The letters that I have stacked in a box in my office that I've got over the last 12 years, that's why I do what I do. And as long as God has put air in my lungs, I'm going to continue to share the story, help people, look for people that say, I want to work with you. I want you to help me. I'm in that place. I don't know how to get out. Help me. And I know I've got the tools that can help people do that.
I love it. I could talk to you all day, but I know you have other things to do as well. But
I got a few minutes if you got more time.
Amazed.
You could. I'm
amazed. Like, really, okay. So before we go, your website, contact information. I'm thinking there's someone listening that's like, I need a speaker for my event, or I'm looking for executive coaching. I'm looking for something, and they've come to this episode and they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that everything kind of fit together that I get to hear you on this podcast, and they want to reach out to you. Sure. After that, I have one more question for you to close off our talk. But let's do all the contact information. Okay. Let's do that as well.
So my website is championmentorship.com, championmentorship.com. Through the website, there is a contact page that you can just hit contact and you can send me an email and I will personally answer and respond to every email myself. On the main page of my website, if you scroll down just a little bit, there's a gift there for all of your listeners. And I recorded a 25-minute Zoom training on how to kick your limiting beliefs to the curb. So if you have ever dealt with limiting beliefs, you have a limiting belief now, which we all do, go to my website, pop in your email information, and you'll get instant access to that download. It's 25 minutes. And if you were inspired by this, that will really encourage you. I walk you through a process of how I have been able to kick my limiting beliefs to the curb. So it's meat and potatoes. It's not, it's not here's a video that I'm going to sell you a massive program afterwards. No, I give you all the stuff in that little free video. So download it for yourself. I'm on Facebook. You can look me up. My name, Jerry. I'll spell my last name. It's Roisentul, Roisentul. Instagram, my handle is Jerry Roisentul. You can look me up there as well. And that's really the best places to reach me. My biggest thing is I'm a keynote speaker. I love to go. I love to speak at conferences, events for companies, businesses, because I've been there, shared this information in groups, and have watched the change happen while I'm in the room teaching. Just the bricks that fall off, the breakthroughs that happen. I also do executive coaching. So if people want more one-on-one work and say, hey, I need to work with you one-on-one, help me work through this, I do that as well too. They can just reach out through the website and I'll get back to them and discuss anything they're interested in.
I love it. Okay, so it's 2024, beginning of the year. People are making resolutions, plans for this year, how this year's going to be better than any other year in the past. Trying to work on ourselves and kind of find our path for this year. One of the things I'd like to ask you is, if you were to step outside of the room from all your family, friends, worker, people that have been in your community, step outside of the room and they were able to speak freely about who you are as a person and what you mean to them, what would you want them to say about you if you're not in the room at all?
Oh, Dave, now you're going to get me all emotional. I see what you're doing. My father was my best friend. He passed away 5 years ago from cancer. And so much of who I am and so much of what I've learned came from my dad. And one of the greatest lessons my dad taught me was when I was 15 years old. And he said to me, son, I'm going to teach you the secret to true success in life and in business. And I said, okay, Dad, what is it? He said, you got two things in your life, your character and your integrity. He said, if you lose either of those, you've lost everything. And David, that stuck with me my entire life. And so if I was out of the room, I know what my friends would say because they tell it to me all the time. I was a man of integrity. I was a man of my word. I genuinely cared about the people that I served, the people that were in my life. I was honest. I was raw. I was real. I'm vulnerable. I'm authentic. I'm transparent. I'm very, I share my story freely. I share my failures freely because I think that's where people learn from. And I think that that's the things that they would say. They tell me that all the time. You know, you walk in integrity. Yeah, I do, because my dad instilled it in me from the time I was 15 that, man, your integrity is all you've got. He used to say this to me, David, do what you say and say what you do. And if you can't do what you say, shut your mouth. And I just never forgot that. And so I think that's what they would say, but really that I care about everybody that I come in contact with. Everybody to me is a person with a life, with a family, with a journey, with struggles. And I just care about everyone. And, you know, my big goal is I want to help everybody. And of course, that's not always feasible, but I will help those that want the help, that say, hey, you know, your journey inspired me. Today at this meeting, when I was at this business meeting, I had a lady come up to me as soon as I was done. I don't even know who she was. I never met her. She came up to me, just tears in her eyes. She says, I want you to know that I was debating all day yesterday whether I was going to come to this meeting or not because it's an hour drive. And she said, I just decided in the morning I was going to go and show up at this meeting. And she says, and I have a son that has contemplated suicide. And I was wondering if you would be willing to talk to my son because I think your story will inspire him. I said, sure, absolutely. And that stuff, David, fires me up. That lights me up inside that, man, I can help somebody else that went through what I was going through. That's what it's all about to me.
I love it. And in our short time together today doing this, I just want you to know that all those things that you listed are your hopes and dreams for what people would say about you, even in our short time. That's what I feel about you. So thank you for demonstrating those things on the podcast.
Thank you, my friend. And listen, I truly do appreciate you and trusting me with your audience to come on and share my story. It really means a lot to me.
It's amazing. Everyone, this is Coach Jerry, and I would encourage you to go and check out the book. Obviously, we want you to go buy the book. That's why we have a podcast, everyone. Leave a great review for the book when you buy it. Let people know why it's important to you. Not just great author, great book. Let's get some detail in there and share that with everyone so they know. And then if you're looking for someone that's going to bring passion and can speak in story and in picture and images for you in your next meeting or event, Coach Jerry's there for you, and I would encourage you to reach out to him.
Yeah, thank you, my friend. I truly do appreciate it, and I hope that I'll be able to talk to some of your listeners here in the future.
Awesome. Everyone, all the information's in the show notes. Go ahead and click those links. Make sure you follow through and leave a great message, and go check out that free gift that Coach Jerry's giving to all of us. I'm going to go do that right away. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, David. I appreciate you, buddy.
Hey, well, thank you for listening. It's a new year, and we're excited to be releasing even more great episodes of Living the Next Chapter, and we want you to come along for the journey. Thank you for being here. If you know of an author that you would love to have featured on the podcast, an author that you enjoy, an author that brings you that excitement, that you would just love to hear them interviewed on this podcast, I would love to hear your suggestion for a future guest and what would be a question or two that you would want us to ask them on your behalf. Go to livinginthenextchapter.com. There's a little speak pipe icon there. You can leave me a voice message. Tell me who should be on the show and give me some question ideas. and I'll use your request and reach out to that author and invite them on and give you full credit for the idea. livingthenextchapter.com. Would love to hear your suggestion, and thank you for listening. Catch you on the next episode.
Hey there, fellow parent. If you're anything like me, balancing screen time for our kids is a constant struggle. That's why I want to share a little secret with you, KidsPod. It's this amazing app I found that's packed with podcasts just for kids. Imagine stories, learning, and fun, all without the screen. It's been a game changer in our house, keeping my kids engaged and their imaginations running wild. And guess what? It's completely free. So download KidsPod today. Trust me, it's a decision you won't regret.